Okay, welcome back. Lauren Kay, thank you for that, for continuing to hang in there with us. Thank you for this donation again. So much appreciated. And especially with a video like today, where I'm trying to bring sort of clarifying information to people who are truly beginners. What I'm going to talk about today, which is values, is, you know, is it's something you'll have to deal with and deal with pretty well if you want to be a good painter. And But Chompers, so someone who calls himself Chompers with a number behind it, I know that's just your handle there. Any books you can recommend for understanding value in painting specifically? I think I could spend years thinking about how values work. Well, the answer to that question, I sent him a sort of an answer that you can places where you can dig in a little bit. He had already talked about landscape, and so I mentioned some landscape painters, but everybody talks about values, from Harold Speed and Solomon, those guys, to I think Burge Harrison, Dow, Arthur, Wesley Dow, is that his name? Oh, there are a lot of resources. Almost anybody who talks about painting in a book on painting will talk about values. But I'm going to talk about it today the way, just using pictures, just in terms of the practical ways that I know to deal with values. But I'm guessing that maybe one or two of you are new enough to have not thought through the idea of what values is in the first place. So we'll just start right into images, and this one is one of many available online. Values is just the lightness or darkness of a note, and like all the way from black to white. And usually people usually give it like a 1 to 10. You can just give it some sort of a rating for yourself. But you need to be able to judge in your pictures where things land in value relationships to each other. And so this was something we did in high school, actually, and I think a number of you might have done it. It's just a thing that can easily be turned into a little class time. High school teachers are always looking for things like this. I recommend this. What you do is you have students paint a strip like that on the right, and then you have them cut it up into little squares or whatever, and present it so that you can isolate those squares and number them and all that. I forget all that we did, but it matters. Values is a huge thing. Remembering one thing, that values, if you don't have values, you can't see. You need dark and light, and so some people think when they say values, they mean light and shadow, and you see how problematical that is. Light and dark is all we mean. How dark is it all the way to, and all the way to, well, let's put it this way. In the world of painting, you can only, you can only go so dark. You can't go as dark as nature. Oddly enough, I mean, it's a funny thing to say, but the surface is another reason for that. You're painting on a surface, and there's going to be light hitting it, and so on and so forth. So you know that if you look at a black note you just put down on your canvas, and you're looking into a sinkhole of dark shadows that's all black over there on the side, you'll see that they don't match. So you're saying in values, we're always trying to set up a range of values. You're saying, and the first thing we'll ever learn in painting is, what's my lightest light? What's my darkest dark? And once you've selected those, much like if you're picking a top and bottom when you're going to draw a figure, you can then, you then say, and so you'll just make every other choice in there a based on how close it is to light or how close it is to dark. And so, as I said, some people will number that 1 to 10, but I don't find it particularly needed to number it. It's just that you have to constantly do relationships. For anybody who's been watching this channel, you know that the argument is relationships is just everything, right? So learning to see is learning to see relationally. Well, learning to see values is hugely about learning to see value relationships. Let's just have some fun, though. I found some funny pictures, the fairly amusing ones, and I'm just going to start with a couple of black and white ones. So this one, I put the photographer's name down here. This is her name is Vivian Mayer. And this is a black and white photograph. And this guy's moving a mirror. In the mirror is the artist. So this is a famous self-portrait. But so if you look at this, And one of the things you can do when you're thinking about values is to reduce the size of the image significantly. It's easier to see the larger values. You look at something like this and you just see values everywhere. Value is just the relative light and darkness. So if you said, looking at this one, though, what's my darkest dark? It might be this, parts of this down here, whatever. These various notes are in the class of your darkest dark. And by the way, we don't have to make it a scale of 1 to 10, and we can just make it whatever it is. And then we talk about the lightest light, which might be that, or some other notes elsewhere might be in the same range as that, but you're going to find out what is your lightest light. And then everything you do knows where to live. Now, you might change your mind about how light or how dark you made those two notes, and you might then change but if you change that choice, then all the other relationships in between will change. Just as if you were drawing a drawing this big, you suddenly made it this big, half is only much smaller than it used to be, et cetera, et cetera. You know, half of something that size is much different from half of something this size. So it'll be much the same here. But you can see then, and I'll talk about other things that relate to this, but you can see then that if this is your lightest light, there are numbers of areas that approximate that. They start coming sort of toward that, right? More nearly. And then if you say this is your darkest dark, you can see the certain value areas really. Now, this is where you want to blur your eye and learn how they do that, because if you blur your eye, you'll be able at least to see which side they tilt toward. You'll be able to see that this dark tilts more nearly toward the dark side than it does to the light. It doesn't tend to join. Whereas this middle tone, even this one arguably, but probably this one will tend toward the darks. But these middle tones here, all these here, are tending toward the lights a little more than toward the darks if you see them side by side. So in any case, so you can talk about all these things. Some people talk about the word half tones. They use the word half. And if you're talking about black, white, then right in the middle is some note. It might be a note like this one. You might call that half. But halftone just means somewhere that isn't the darkest dark or lightest light. But one thing I want to mention in talking about this one, though, is that all pictures you're going to see, and I'll talk about others with it, but all pictures you're going to see take on what we call a general tonality. That's a general value. And so this picture is not a dark picture. Let me see. I'm going to go get a dark picture. Let's go get this one. You see that one? That's a dark picture, the picture up on the right. But you can see this is a halftone picture. Its general tonality is half value. It's not a dark picture. And when you have a middle tone as your general value, and part of the way you figure out that that's what it is, first of all, you just look at it. You can see this isn't a dark picture. If you compare it with this, see this area over on this side of the screen. If you just look at black, you'll see the difference. You'll begin to see the difference. But so what that does, though, if you have a middle tone picture, it means that the darks and the lights can be featured, right? And that means that, and since everything we do, when I say that values are required for seeing, it requires contrast. So the more contrast, the more projective a thing is to your eye, the more your eye will pick it up. Like this piece of the hat, the eye will pick that up pretty well, or this spot over here, because the contrast is so great. And we have a factor like sharpness of edge, which you have to know how to do to manage that kind of stuff too. And I'll show you, if I can manage to remember it, I'll show you how we process this. But you know what values are, though, now. You just know that and it's a scale. You want to say that there's the darkest, the middle, but that's all it is, the darkness and lightness of a note. No matter what color it is, we'll use color too to talk about this, so you don't get lost in it. But you can see that this picture has just all kinds of values. You know, it goes from here, and also these guys here aren't as light, and then some of the window spots or this area, or some of these, or maybe next. And you can see that it climbs up to this one, and then and gets darker to this one, and darker to this one, which is held over here and over here. We'll talk more about how to see these things. There's a couple different things I want you to think about. If you want to have easy success with this, that help you to see relationships better. But it's all in seeing the relationships. But you could do a count. You could actually, probably, if you got inclined, you could take a picture like this, a photograph of it, and you could probably cut out these sections and make yourself that same scale that I just showed you. You could take the darkest dark and the next darkest and just line them all up, and you'd be able to see, you'd be able to see the scale in action in a picture. Now I got this one because this picture was taken by a photographer when Gamble was still alive, obviously, and I think it was for a show or for a book. I forget which it was for that he did, but he designed it. Mr. Gamble designed this picture. But so one of my fellow students was pointing out that he was making himself into Batty. He's a picture of a bat, and he has it pointing right at his head, and we all took delight in thinking that he was pulling the photographer's leg. But the way he did it, it looked like the camera was being mostly run by Gamble, and the way the setup was set up, it was very clear that what he was trying to do. So now what happens when you start thinking this way? So this, generally speaking, you see, is a slightly darker picture, isn't it? The general tonality is darker, even though the lights are lighter, or there's more of the lighter, as it still comes across feeling like, and that's all I'm talking about. It feels like you'd think of this as darker. Certainly the darks dominate a greater mass. But again, you can see the darkest darks in through here, and you can see this next level right through here. And these things have to be organized. They have to be right to each other. Your picture will not do this. And all you do that, you just do it with your eyes, but there are other things we're going to show you too that you'll be thinking to do. And by the way, that distribution of lights and darks we call spotting. Now you'd say that these things, Gamma would say that these whites create patterns on the page. Patterns, you see the shapes, just interesting patterns in the sense of cutting out a pattern, like a dress. And the darks do the same thing, but the spotting is an interesting thing. If a picture is dominated by dark, the lights will be spotted around. That's an expression we use. There might be a better expression. I just don't know what it is yet. All right, so there you are. But now, this is one of those places where you can begin to see, though, the range in a color world. And to see the color better, it definitely is useful to blur your eye just to kill color quality. And by the way, because you kill color quality when you blur your eyes, is a reason not to blur your eyes when you're looking at color notes. Don't try to understand color, but you can understand the values of color or the proximity of values to each other. What I want to talk about here, so this is a piece of actual, it's a photograph we took of something on the wall. But I want you to notice that if you look at a picture, the value of this and the value of this at the same time. Now we're accepting that they're both darks, and you could even do it with this value or to this one or this. But if you just put them both in your eye at the same time and just pause, don't try to understand them or anything, just notice. And one of them will appear lighter than the other one. They are the darks, but one of them is going to say, I'm lighter than you, right? Now you could do the same thing with this and this one. Now this is what I call floating values, but if you do them, so people will, let me finish what I'm saying. If you do them consistently, just floating them, and don't try to figure it out, you'll be able to see whether or not this value is lighter than this one, this value is darker than this one. And then having made the two values, what you want to do, though, is having made them, is just check them and see if they operate as the same set when you see them both painted. So you're going to hit these notes, and then you're going to watch and see if they sit in the same range when you're looking at this and this as two things just floating in your vision. You'll see if they feel like they are the same set, one being darker than the other. Nothing much more than that. But this value here is probably the same value as this, and this one can look darker than this one. Well, with values, that thing should look darker. I should say the one above here should look darker if in nature it looks darker, but it doesn't mean it is darker. And those are the ways that you can sort of have your eyes mess you up. If you float, this one here looks like it's pretty. If I float, now again, I say that's what you do is you get these two color notes, and you get them both in your eye at once, and you just let them sit there. And you let them make decisions. Let them say who's darker, who's lighter. But don't go back and forth, just look at them together. But this one here appears to be taking on about the same value as this. It appears to be the same. Does it appear to be the same as this? It's probable that it is, but sometimes they appear to be more the same than others. But that's what the things you're going to do. This value here or this one, where do they live? If you float them, again, they begin to look more like this. But it looks like a light because of the circumstances in which it's sitting. And that's something it happens to color, it happens to everything. You get faked out by the circumstances, by the context. So let's go through some more pictures and I'll come back to that. I want to grab this one for color. I may come back to that, I should say. I don't want to promise too much here. Now, this is over the hilltop, and I'm showing you some stuff that's kind of fun. This is over the hilltop looking from the site we're building on. And if you walk down to where the fence line is, which is the boundary to this farm, you'll start seeing the possibilities here. We're elevated pretty good. That's probably Vermont over there. This down below here is the town of North Haverhill. And this is the guy's farm. So here we are. Here's your darkest dark, right here, right? This is probably your lightest light. And this is fundamental to all that goes on here. And then everything else is about getting these guys to land more in proximity to the darkest darks or more in proximity to the lightest lights. In other words, to use that blurring of the eye mechanism to see who it tends to join. Like this light here tends to join, this whole middle tone tends to be more like that, although some of this, you can see there's a series of steps down. There's this, and then there's this. I'm just going through the darks, and then there's this. And then what's next, is it this, or is it this, or this? And you can see that what we're dealing with, and some of that same middle tone here is probably also up here. But that's what you want to get good at, just floating these things in isolation in relation to each other. But the next thing you want to do is make sure that when these values meet, they pop these what I'm going to call light effects, right? You have to get the right amount of contrast, and you can't see that contrast aright if you don't have the edge sharp enough. So when you're painting, that's one of the reasons we draw more articulately at the beginning, even when we're trying to lay something in. We get the color going out there, but we also get the value relationships to produce this glow of light here, of this one here. We're trying to make these events happen because now what happens is these effects are produced by value contrast plus edge. And so because we're floating them in relation to each other, that's going to be the second way we use to improve our values. So the first one is to float the values and just look at them in relation to each other. Try to see this one while you're looking at this one. Are these the same? Again, I'm going to suggest again that you've heard me say before that you look away, look to one side. Put those in your mind, but look over here and let them both sit there while you're looking over here. And don't get faked out. Try to do it by just floating. Don't get faked out by the light effect. But the next thing we do is we don't allow ourselves to get faked out because we make the light effect here. We make whatever light effects associate with this value up here. And then we can compare by floating again the effect to the effect. Okay? Now remember, this entire game is one of relationships. So figuring out all the many ways these things relate to each other requires you to use your eyes in multiple different ways. But when I say effect, though, I do mean that feeling of light that you get when you put a dark next to a light. There's a relative feeling of light. And you want to get that quality there. Sometimes it's produced also by chroma, right? What I mean to say, the values have to be right, but the chroma may be a factor in faking you out or helping you out. But in any case, once you get to the your pattern, well, see, when you first put down notes as an impressionist, you're just spotting color values. So you're putting down definitely a blob of dark here. You're spotting something here. You're spotting something there. I always start with the light, so I'm spotting something here. I'm looking at this color note here because it's the lightest of the sky area. I'm spotting this. Just spotting some notes around with the idea of trying to see what sort of value range exists out there and what painting can do. And then we literally then go to putting some of the points side by side and seeing what it's going to take to produce that remarkable effect there, both to improve the color relationship. Suddenly this looks redder than it did a minute ago, or if you thought about it in isolation because of its proximity to this blue. And as of course, it also gets informed by what happens where it's in proximity to this, assuming this is the same value. But what you then find yourself doing is finding the quality of the light effect here, getting the color value right of this, the color value right of that, and the edge right. And you're getting that same thing to happen here. And then you, again, float those two effects, those two events in relation to each other. And this is the process that I use for researching the color notes. Of course, the fun part is that also it helps you to begin to locate important stuff in the composition, like this light effect is going to be important, but it begins to locate this thing that might be something like a center of interest or a spot of interest. But you can see you'll have to locate this. There are things like this note here, that to that. These are exits. So, to an extent, that's a good picture. I mean, that's another story entirely. Okay. But that gives you an idea, though. The light effect is produced by value contrast plus edge, and there's an element of chroma involved in it. And you can't, an impressionist says don't dismiss any of them, don't just get the values right and then try to glue color onto it. First of all, you'll run out of what they call neural energy. So let's see what else is here that might be useful. Now, the one thing, I'm showing you this one because I want you to be aware that if you don't see the world as flat, as just 2D, then this thing doesn't make as much sense to you. Now, I've showed you the scribble down below here as demonstration of, I did something that was sort of like this. There was a table over here, somewhere in here with junk on it, and another table or something up in here, and something way in the distance up there, cloth, or maybe that was a gap in the light over there like this, maybe like this here. But you can see that what I've done, nothing in here has become what I'd call real. The shapes are all real, but there's no attempt to paint an object here. And what I've done is I've stayed in the field of color values, but in this case, pure values. And I recommend this. You take a thing like this, it's full color, and you begin to try to reduce it to a values statement. And if you paint the way I said, you get the value to the value of the value. You see a white to lesser white to whatever in that range. And the dark is dark. Maybe it's this, or maybe it's some of this, maybe it's all this stuff in through here, or significant parts of that. And you're floating those things. Like you see, this one is a middle tone compared to these out here. And by the way, when Sargent talks about, I'll show you Sargent, but he talks about middle tones. You're looking at a picture like this, when he talks about values, he talks about like pictures tend to have something like 4 or 5 values or some number. I forgot what he said. It tends to break down that way. But you could easily see how this picture here, these big darks dominate this picture. It's really almost just one value. But there's a secondary dark. So there's a step down, middle down, a step down. And maybe that would include this one as another one. So that's 1, 2, 3. Then you jump to the other end, and there's the brightest light, which these two are pretty much part of, but then you'd see their steps down in those. So those wind up forming the significant values. Now, every picture has no end of values, but it's useful to know when you're blowing your eyes that you can eliminate a whole bunch of this stuff for now. And at that point, you're talking about the great value of the area. And I do it if it's got busyness. I do it in a busy kind of marking way, so that I'm not trying to avoid. I just don't want to draw in here, but I don't want it to look simplistically flat, so it won't feel like the general impression if I do that. But nevertheless, that's the pursuit of you, as in you're clearly going after what's my darkest dark, what's my lightest light. And we're spotting some values around initially, as I've shown you. And by the way, I want to say that Mr. Producer will put up on the screen, I think we've done no fewer than 5 videos on values. I'll try to get those in hand, but they're easy to spot. There's probably maybe as many as 7 or 8. And they're all covered this in a different way. This is just the pure pragmatic, when you see values, this is what you think stuff, okay? Other ones have to do with light effects more particularly and that sort of thing. But so we'll try to give that to you. But what I wanted to say is you think of these things just in terms of the local shape at where you need the effect to play. And so we had to do all this. We had to find our way around here, but we didn't necessarily do it at once. In fact, I tend to float corners like this and get out other points like this exit over here and this exit over here, maybe even this exit, and get a series of points with their effects floating around in relation to each other. So you hear me talking about that. But that's effects. What I mean to say by effects, though, is it's value contrast plus edge, and it's all it is in this setting. So it's the value contrast where it's immediately happening, right? Exactly there. Not the general value of this, but the immediate effect in that value there. But this here still is a big general middle tone value that you can see maybe some other versions of in other places. This might even be one of them. It looks like it could be, but it looks maybe more nearly in the light family. So yeah, I hope you can see what I mean by these larger values. And again, if you blur your eyes, you'll see which ones hang together. You'll want to make marks out of these lights. This is the composition here. This some of this and this, little of this, and some of these darks up here are the significant events in this painting. So if you blur your eyes, they're events that are produced by values, okay? So one of the things we do is we spot values. So if you're going to do this, you don't have to go up here and draw it. You can just chunk a piece of dark up there. That's drawing by mass, right? So you can mass draw a chunk of that and have a look at it and manage one edge of it till they get the value effect right to some other one. And again, and what you're going to want to do is for pure values, you hold this in your eye while you're looking at this one, and make an estimate that they're the same, not the same, one of them's lighter or darker. And then as you go further along in the painting, as you articulate the edge quality and the contrast at this edge, you may change your mind about it, but these have to have that impact, that projection to your eye as you get the values circumscribing it, right? So there'll be a certain impact, visual impact. I forget what is the term that Meldrum uses, disturbance or something like that. So there's out of the boring ordinary, there are vague things here that hardly disturb the world at all, but that's more disturbing, usually the way he says it. And that's very strikingly so. This is fairly striking. This is not as striking because of it is contrasty, but it's softer feeling compared to this, at least in this photograph. So these value joints are ways. For example, if you don't get this light effect right to this light effect here, you're missing some information that'll be very helpful in getting this value right to this value down here, et cetera. If you follow what I'm saying. So there are many ways. Lost and found is one of the classic ways to find what the value is of an object. For example, if you don't know what value this object is here, notice that this one, it comes right into here and joins this as the same value, essentially, ignoring this little data in here. But this value here looks like it wants to be the same as this one here. Now that's a lost and found mechanism where you can float the notes. That's one. You can deal with contrast to contrast to contrast and correct values. But you can also do the run-on. So when a value joins another value, that's information about, and it happens all over the place, that's information about the value of both sides. They are the same. So, if this appears to run on to that, even if it seems to be running into that, that's useful information, and you'll be able to see this almost as if it was one value. That's useful information. So you look at any object, you'll see a different color, and this is where most of you guys will get confused if you're a beginner. You'll see this, and you'll paint it as a separate object. You'll create a silhouette here where there really isn't one. Or it's so minor you would never make it, or not soon make it. But what you'll notice is that this unit tends to tie on to this unit over here, right? Or tie on to this one. Even though it's a different color, that's where if you blur your eye, you'll kill the color a bit. You'll see how it rather hangs together. So that's the lost version. In a sense, what I was articulating before by effect. So you got to get the full impact of this thing. You got to find out what your lightest light and darkest dark with sharpest edge will do to make that happen. And then you got to get that to this, and then you got to attune them to each other. So that's the effect relationships, and then that's what we call the found. And then that's very much a key to why you even talk about the lost and found stuff. It's not a gimmick or a trick. It's very much a way of establishing your values. And in our case, we've established the values based on effects, these disturbances, as Meldrum would call them. So that's what I've done going through all this whole area down here. Let's see if there's anything else. The Sargent one, this is, you can discuss this, and when you're doing an imaginative painting, it might be wise to, but you can discuss this very simply as a big, the way you want to think of this is this great big, it's middle tone. It's a middle tone to dark picture, right? That's my way of talking. I'm saying it's a middle tone picture, but it's past halfway toward the darks a little bit, despite this big blast of light. But you can see that this is describing this, you'd say this big middle tone here is tone number one. The darkest dark is this value through here, spotting up a bit again. Maybe. That's what you call an effective dark. But so the dark's through here. And then you'd say, well, there are dark middle tones there, right? The whole dark middle tone world, which is the guitars and other things. That's the dark middle tone world, perhaps. And at the other end, you have the lightest lights, and you can see that they're breaking out, clickety, 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 all the way through this area. And so when you have a dark field like that of values, you see the lights are going to be the ones that are uniquely spotting up. Now that's how you can understand your picture conceptually, your value scheme. You'd say this is a big dark middle tone picture, half tone picture, very powerfully showing darks right through the whole field towards the middle, and powerful lights going in and out of the dark mass itself. And just that could be a wholesale description. You could almost describe this as a 3-value system, but certainly within 4 and 5 in that same way of talking. Now, as I said before, in every painting, just by having a value moved from dark to middle tone to light to whatever, there's 100 values in there. So we don't mean this in a simple way. But that was fun. I thought it might be amusing to look at this one side by side with this one of my studio again. Hey, John, I hope you're watching these. But you can see that this picture here is a basically dark picture, right? So these lights spot up as, they're sort of events in this big dark to middle tone picture. But against the light areas, you can see the darks also spot up. So we're talking about the darkest darks. But you can see, you'd say this is your darkest dark. You can see them in different areas. You can see this is a step down in lots of these other areas. There's a step down from these darks. And then you can see there's a large, there's flecking powerful lights, flecking all over the place. And there's this other middle tone that just seems to sit right through the whole painting as well. Now, when you're analyzing a picture, it's useful to actually do little scribbles, and that's one of my videos talks about it, value spotting and how you think about values. I think I only break it down into 3 values because for most pictures that will give you management of most of what you're going to be dealing with. I've shown you other ones where we talk about the values of the Benson paintings, the birds outdoors and stuff like that. So I hope this is coming across. It's just more of the same here. I don't even know that I need to say much. One of the things that just comes up in composition is this idea of interchange, the whole top half of this picture being middle tone to light, the whole bottom half being dark. You can see how the bottom half features lights, not even bright lights, could be middle tone, it'll feature. But this zone all through the middle here, you can see features the lights really nicely. It also features the dark, so it makes a very strong area of interest. Of course, this is also interesting. But nevertheless, you're seeing how values work to create interest. The lower the contrast, the less the interest to the eye, the less disturbance, as Meldrum would say. So there's a significant disturbance. These guys down here, this is all very significant disturbance by contrast. And your job, as I said before, is to decide what your lightest light is. Is it this? So, as I said, if you look at that while you're looking at this, while you're looking at this, while you're looking at all the other lights in the room, you'll be able to, it should come to you that there is a declension, from there to here, to maybe here, to maybe down to these eventually, maybe this one too. This is one of those places where that may be one of the lightest lights, but it remains to be determined partially because you want to get it into a context. And which is that lighter note that it's sitting in here. That would appear to be sort of the same note, maybe lighter, dark, maybe lighter at the top. But this one is looking brilliant because it's sitting in a dark pool. This is sitting in a very mid-tone pool. But yeah, so you can see that even in a light mid-tone world, true mid-tone, this probably is, that middle darks that aren't black darks will make silhouettes. And you could say this is a composition problem, but it's all a values problem. And the value, and the way values work in a distribution across the page is the very interest of a picture. And this is rather a fun thing to look at, just in the abstract, just as pattern, just as phenomena dancing around in a picture. Yeah. I'm going to recommend also that you always see things in sets. If you have a really inky black like this one, allow yourself to back off from the paint, take in the painting as a whole, and just notice what other parts tend to seem to want to participate very specifically with the darkest dark. And you'd say the same thing with these lightest lights. They participate, but you'll be able to see better whether they're the same value if they look like, If they look like, oh, that's the group of the darks, you'll be able to make a better assessment about them. Now, you might still say, well, this doesn't still appear, and you'll still work it out, whether that's really darker or just appears dark than this, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all in the working out as you do other things. All right. I think I have, I want to go back, and I'm not sure if I can remember why. I want to go back to this one. I wonder if I can do a reasonable review. That really largely covers, oh, I know what I didn't discuss, and that's why I'm here. That whole issue of values includes the question of value movements. So when you're trying to get this value right to this, you're using, and that getting that, and you use that edge and get all those things, you're trying to produce a light effect. So a light effect is a measure of value quality, and you can only do these things in the world of relationships, right? We can't match some of these notes on our canvas or our painting. So edges, like in a bright room, some part of this being hit by the daylight is going to be stronger than the white of the paper can ever be. So you know we're living in a false range. So we say we produce the very best we can this light effect. But then the rest of the world is a problem of going around and adjusting other light effects, other light effects, other light effects to find out what the whole system is going to look like. You say what's my dark is dark, it's my light is light. But included, so we're talking about light effects. And we're talking about lostness, right? You can see that, well, let's see if I can find a spot for you where you have losses into the background. I thought maybe I'd get it off of this foot here, having this dark become part of that, et cetera. Do we have a spot? No, I don't. This one actually sort of doesn't. Well, but what I wanted to talk about though is value movement, and so you have a value going from such and such a light to such and such a dark at its darkest, and you can see that it goes to its lightest right here, and it goes moving. This is the famous sfumato. That's one of the discussions about midtones. Leonardo da Vinci talks about it, but he talks about making it smoke-like, and you can see it means it's smooth. It has no texture. But you can see here that it moves from a light midtone to a lighter one. And so what do you see here? Well, you see that big arc of form. You see form. And when you see value movement going from lighter to darker, it will always suggest something like form, or it will suggest, like on this spot here, it will simply suggest a weakening of the tone. And so a weakening of the tone can happen. You see it happening across these penumbra things. This is your darkest dark, but you can see it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And you can use the strategy of going out and finding out where you can last see a sort of an event. That's a pretty weak one, but it's probably stronger than all the other ones. So you go out there and you say, let's make that little event, that contrast right there good. Make this one right. And now you know where you're starting from. Now, assuming you got your darkest dark as a choice, you make that. You say, let's work with this darkest dark. We have this midtone over here that we presumably have right in the sense of the world of floating notes. If this is white, white, white here, then this is the halftone, this is dark. Well, at any rate, you just want to watch. Again, by the way, you can watch all three of these at once, and you can actually get to know them. This is where memory really does help. Get to know them, picture them, try to see them well enough so that you'll recognize them when you put them onto your canvas. But you'll get those three notes right in relation to each other. But once that's set up, then you'll know what value this is, and then you say, okay, now that weak effect, I've got to get that there, and then I got to change this darker and darker, darker, and this has got to produce this effect at this joint here. These are just strategies for making values, okay? There are a lot of places the shadow line, is almost imperceptible here. It's very powerfully expressed here. So these are very sudden and abrupt shifts, and these are almost imperceptible ones, but there is a point. And you could actually cast a shadow from here down, and you could actually see the exact angle of the light. You can find not just the angle, but the actual point at which, again, Leonardo, and that whole discussion is about values, that is the shadow line begins, the point beyond which no light gets, none of the original source, the main source gets in. So I wonder if there's anything else I can say to you. Now, these areas that are busy like this, if you go in there and start drawing these things, now you should draw this to this. That's say you should make this edge because you're trying to find the value of this area. Okay, that's a big deal. And this value contrast is constantly being related to this value contrast, or to this value contrast, or to all the other value contrasts in the area. But if you're a painter like Velasquez, you're thinking value blobs. And that's quite a huge thing. Painting is what Hale said, by the spot rather than by outlines. So your first job will be to set this value up, put the blob out there, and have a look at it to this one. And we'll worry about shapes in a minute, okay? We'll worry about, where we're going to locate something, some hard reader or something like this. And I do pursue these value units on the basis of their most powerful effects. In other words, this is going to be significant, what this does when it meets this value. But I tend to take the top guys and get them working with each other as the strongest sets. I try to get stuff like this, or even that one relatively, or this one. I try to get that whole group of things leading the way. And then the lesser ones. And remember, this is just a value assessment process. Remember, you're in a search for the values and that's all we're talking about today, a search for the values in a painting. And so the second thing that goes with that, of course, I've mentioned that it has to all be looked on as flat. If you see a person there, you'll go into a different world. You'll complexify. You get past, what did Bobby Jones, the golfer, he said, when I think about three things, I make a bad shot. And he went down from two, makes a better one, but think about one thing. And so if we're talking values is one thing. So when you're in the values world minimally, make sure you know how to play these strategies and think about the one thing. But so you're thinking of the world as flat, but you're also thinking of it as, just 2D and no realism. No, even though I say form concepts, there may be a form movement here. It has to look like that, but we're not trying to understand the breast or the wing, the span of the wing or the form of the leg. We're not trying to understand that or trying to express one out of our head, the idea of a leg form. We're just noticing whether or not it's looking like that as we do our value movement and value relationship stuff. So the gradations have to be right. If they're good, it'll look like a leg. If they aren't good, it won't. But so what I'm saying, don't you see, is that this world is now one of the pure abstraction called values. So you have to be flat. So that's one of the aspects of it. And the other one is that you have to be out of your mind. So it's just values, what they do, floating in relation to each other, where they're lost and found, and when they're found, whether that group of found things is rightly regulated in relation to each other. And of course, it goes all the way through to the weaker. Like you have some very weak areas like this, we have contrasts like this that are very, very weak. Those things eventually will all have to be right to each other as well, but they don't set the table. These great value, this is the conversation you're going to get with Sargent. This great value here, this great value, this great light here, this great value here, and this great value here set the table for this painting. And it may be that you find more or less to be the case. But you could argue that this is a three-value system, that it's just this value here and this one are one. The lights are two, and the darks are three. But of course, the darks, as you can see, are two. They are two in themselves, but they're so close to each other that you might try to say, let's think about those, even though you make them slightly different. Let's think about those as a unit for a while. You'll find probably that this value here and this value here are all part of a different unit. That's what I'm suggesting is where it gets to be an illusion. But anyway, so this whole thing winds up being its own unit. But it's possible that this one and this one are the same. So what is it? Bright light, value 2, value 3, and value 4, which may have its variations in it. And so that's the conversation that has to do with the most significant values. And it's always about that, doing that. But if you could do those things, if you can float the notes and get 2 or 3 of them in your eye at once, and let yourself see who's lighter, who's not lighter, and if it's not clear, it's no big deal. Find something that is more clear, or find a different relationship that's more useful to you. So, yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Producer, I think that might be it. I did have fun messing with these things, especially with Mr. Gamble here. I hope he would have approved. By the way, this is a nice example of how spotting works. See, this is a light area, and you see the spots on it. That's just the game. This picture, but you could argue, is a dark picture, and these are the light spots on it. And it's hugely how much entertainment value you get out of these things. This is why I say this is so much more like musical notes. that it's the size and distribution of the notes. It's the impact what they're doing though in a set that begins to suggest this idea of, you know, of, anyway, by the way, I don't know if I did it already, but there's middle tone you can see going right through here. Serious dark powering through here. Middle tone showing up in lots of places. This is a very nice, simple value construction. It's very easy to look at. Would have made a nice painted portrait. All right, Mr. Gamble, thank you very much for all you've done for all of us, on my behalf in particular. I'm sure I've forgotten something, but that's the way it goes. I thought of all sorts of things at 3 o'clock in the morning last night when I was trying to stay asleep. But I think that covers it. It's just all very practical. And this was nothing but an attempt to show you how we think about values in a practical way, and hopefully be something that beginners can apply for their own benefit going forward. It is very simple. Our world does have to be analyzed in terms of pure visual content, and there's nothing more clear or more useful than knowing what your dark is dark and your lightest lights are, and how to manage the relationships of all the passages, from the greater units in relation to the greater units to each other, to all the minor play. And just keep remembering, Brackman said this to this and that to that, and you're fine. Okay, Chompers, Mr. Chompers, or I don't know if it's a Mr. Chompers, thank you for that. I'm sorry I didn't address the question of books much better, but I did do it online, so if you want to look for the comments. Everybody talks about values one way and another. I'm quite sure Leonardo does. He talks about values in aerial perspective. In the distance, the values get closer to each other. So these are factual things about the visual world, a landscape or something like that. So you'll find plenty of that conversation out there. Take it all in, take it all in. But when you're an eyeball, that's one of the values of being an impressionist eyeball for a while, is that all you're doing is collating data, and values is, you could say, data number one. All right. I guess that'll do it, guys. See you in the next one. Hope you have a great painting week. Don't forget to subscribe, share, all that stuff. Yeah. Why do half of those words escape me, Mr. Producer? As I said, we're getting now, I think we're up to maybe 6, 8, 10, maybe as many as 10 people saying they might like to do something with us online. I'm trying to do a bit of I wouldn't call it a course, but like an 8-week session where we could do an hour a week or an hour and a half a week with you guys. And when I have, pretty soon I'm going to do the count. And if I have as many as even 9 or 10 people, I'll probably just go ahead and start the quote unquote class. So several of you people are responding to me. It's best if you do it by email. And my email is ingretson_studio@yahoo.com. Yeah. Karen, you asked me something. I forgot what it was, though, about the website. When you guys are looking to donate, or when you're looking for the books that we've talked about in the past, be sure you go to the studio.ingbretson.com location, okay? And you'll see a place to donate right away earlier, and then you'll see, scrolling down that first page. In other places, there's a gallery showing former students' work and stuff like that, but as you scroll down that page, Mr. Producer has put all the books and stuff like that into that scrolled up thing, which I really like the look of very much. So, all right, thank you. You guys take care.